Hello and welcome to Retake, and today's very different. Today's a very special video and it's a very special series. As you can probably see, I've got a little bit of camera equipment out here. That's because I'm going through about 8 or 9 hours of footage. And that footage is of a very well-known person, and that person is David Pleasance. And the reason for the sheer volume of footage is because this is going to be a mini series. It's going to be the start of a mini series. You're going to watch part 1 hopefully in a few minutes. We went to a live museum in Cambridge, the History of Computing Museum in Cambridge, and basically you will hear different sounds in the background. We can't avoid it. You'll hear footsteps now and again, and you'll hear creaking and groaning of furniture and things being moved. When you're in a live museum setting, it's going to be unavoidable. So I hope you take this into account on this video, and I hope you enjoy this, because this is a different look at David Pleasance. I think most of us will know about his history with Commodore, but how many people know about the history of David Pleasance? So let's take a look at part 1. And part 1's about mischief and music. So I hope you enjoy this. David Pleasance here today, and he's just, what we're going to do is we're going to try and talk about more of David Pleasance, because I think people know about, or will know who watch these, about the Commodore history, or a lot of it. Indeed. But I'm not sure if they know about the man behind the machine, which is David, because I think the Commodore story's been kind of told from various angles quite a few times. Indeed. But I don't think people realise other than what they've read in magazines about yourself, about your life and how you got to that point, and then also about your new ventures and your writing as well, which has just been a big part of your life as well, hasn't it, really, recently?
Absolutely, yeah. Well, I guess I should start with my childhood. Seems a good place to start. I was born in Great Yarmouth, and my father was an electronics engineer, and I can remember one of my earliest memories was kind of being an entrepreneur, in that Great Yarmouth is one of those places where it's renowned for its suite called Rock, and you have the Great Yarmouth in letters all the way through the rock, sticks of rock. And as a youngster, I must have been about 6 or 7, I can't remember exactly, my father had made me a little pushcart, and I used to go up to the seafront, and I would buy what people don't know is that this rock, after a little while, it goes soft, because the air gets to it. And I used to buy this soft rock for something like a penny a stick, and then I'd load up my car, and then I'd go door to door and sell rock for 2 or 3p a stick. And I mean, I don't know why I did that, but it must have been signs of, being a salesperson or something. Anyway, my life really changed dramatically. When I was 14, my father and mother took me and my 2 kid sisters on holiday. We went over to Holland for a week, and it completely opened my eyes to things. And the truth of the matter is, I got so enamoured by it, the following summer, at age 15, when I was on school holidays, I hitchhiked around Europe. Right. It just had opened this Pandora's box for me. And then the following year, age 16, I spent the summer working in a hotel on the seafront, saving up some money. And at the age of 17, I'd actually started working. I started to work as an apprentice sheet metal worker. And talk about, a fish out of water. It was one of the worst things I've ever done in my life. Anyway, one day I just got so fed up. I got fed up with England, I got fed up with my family, wanted to get away as far as I could. So I went to Australia. 17 years of age. I mean, I think upon it now, I thought, how did you have the guts to do that, But I did. I went to Australia, and best thing I ever did, because it changed my life completely. I became much more assertive, much more my own person. And In fact, when I first got there, I carried on my apprenticeship, which was the wrong thing to do, simply because as an apprentice you get very little pay, but when you're living away from your family, your accommodation and running costs are the same as a person on full pay. And it really didn't, it really wasn't good for me. So I did all sorts of jobs. I was a bus conductor in Sydney for about 6 months. And that was such a fun job because I was mischievous. I used to do things on the bus that were very naughty, but you just couldn't resist. For example, one day, it was a double-decker bus. The bus was ram-packed, and downstairs everybody was standing, and a guy got on the bus and he was carrying on his shoulders I guess it was a 100-weight sack of cement powder. Carrying on his shoulder, and he forced his way in, so I had to force my way in to get to it. We used to wear badges that were a bit like a sheriff's badge. So without anybody seeing me, I turned my badge so I was pointing it this way, and as I walked past him, it sliced through this cement. And next thing you know, I come out, next thing you know, it went boom, and the whole of the bus was full of cement powder. Everybody was covered. It was the funniest thing you've ever seen. My driver had to pull over. He was laughing so much. Nobody knew it was me. They just assumed that this bag had glass. So I said I was a bit mischievous in those days. But you have to laugh, don't you? When you think about it. On another occasion, a guy got on the bus and he was absolutely rat-ass drunk. And the bus service we went to was right out to, I can't remember the name of the place, but it was right out on a peninsula. And we got there and we took him off the bus and put him in the bus shelter and left him there. He had woken up and didn't know where the hell he was. But he was asleep all the way, Again, mischievous. And then another time it was an accident. There was a bus service that used to run from Central Station to King's Cross, I think it was. And there were two different ways that you could go. And I put the wrong number up on the bus to the right destination. But all these people got on the bus going to work. We got to the point and then we went this way and they were expecting to go that way. It was a riot. Anyway, so I was a bus conductor for a few months. And then having been a welder as a part of my apprenticeship, I was quite a good welder and I quite enjoyed welding. I joined British Leyland Motor Corporation in Sydney. They put an advert in the paper looking for welders, and you had to have your papers and everything, which of course I hadn't got. So I go up to have an interview with them, and they said, "Where's your papers?" I said, "Actually, they got lost on my way here to Australia." And you can't work with us. Well, look, I said, I'm good at my job. I said, look, put me on the production line. Let me work. Let me work for a week. I'm no good. Don't pay me. What have you got to? Yeah, that's a good idea. So I joined this. I joined a team of people. We were in Austin 1100s.
It's the car you hoped would happen. It's the miraculous BMC Morris 1100,
which was garbage. But I was on a team. There was 14 of us on this one team, and I was the only person who could speak English.
Right.
That's right. It was so funny. Even the boss of the team was Greek or whatever they were. All different nationalities. It was so funny. But then, of course, what happened is they used to make the car bodies, and they used to put them on these two high trailers and drag the bodies around to fit different things. And one of these days, one of these car bodies just come off the welding line, fell off, and it landed on its side-on corner, and it just flattened down. And of course, they come around and covered it all up. You couldn't see it because it was structurally was a mess, So no wonder they didn't do very well. Anyway, then I moved up to Sydney. That's from Sydney up to Brisbane. And basically, what had happened was that a friend of mine that I met, an English guy. I stayed in a boarding house there. There was 13 English guys, all my sort of age. I was sort of 17, 18. And one day he said to me, I want to leave Sydney. He said, I think I'm going to go to Melbourne. He said, do you want to come with me? Because he'd got the car. And I said, yeah, okay, why not? He said, the only thing is, he said that last year, he said, I took a bus journey up to Service Paradise, the Gold Coast. he said, and it was great. He said, so I'd like to come up there first before we go all the way back to Melbourne. I said, suits me. So we get in this car, and he used to think he was some kind of a rally driver.
Right, okay.
And we were going up through the what they call the Blue Mountains, and we go down all these mountain roads, and of course he lost control of the car, and we smashed into a tree sideways on, and it made a mess of the car. We were okay, luckily, but we kind of limped into Service Paradise. And then the first thing I did, I'd had a girlfriend that had given me some money, $200, because I was broke all the time. The first thing I did was I rented a mini moke in Service Paradise, and it was incredible. And I met this girl, and I didn't find out until later, but I spent 3 days with her until all my money had gone. But I found out later that she was the first Australian girl ever to be the centre page of Playboy.
Right, okay.
Yeah, she was an absolute babe. Anyway, we went on, we carried on up to Brisbane because that was the nearest place, and we couldn't get any work. And I can remember distinctly sharing a room with him, and this place we lived in, we spent our days catching cockroaches and mice. It was pretty awful, you know. Anyway, one day he comes back, he'd been out somewhere, and he came back and said, I'm leaving tomorrow. And I said, oh yeah, where are you going? Not we. He said, I'm leaving. Where are you going? He said, I've joined the Air Force. He said, I'm so fed up of being hungry and not having a job and everything, you know. Anyway, I caught up with a guy, just by a complete accident, that I knew back in Sydney, who'd moved up to Brisbane long before me. And he was quite established, and he'd got a girlfriend. Bill Matchett, his name was. And anyway, I ran into him, and then I ended up moving into the same place that he was living. And he used to go, and his girlfriend Vicky, they've been married for years and years now, his girlfriend Vicky, he used to go out with her 6 nights a week. And then one night a week he used to go to the local music shop and have a guitar lesson. Yeah. And so when he came back from his guitar lesson, I'd get him to show me. I couldn't even hold a guitar, I really couldn't. But I was interested, you know. And anyway, then one day I ran into some girls that we used to know in Sydney, where we lived in Sydney. There was a house quite high up on the hill, and the grass went, and there was a wall, and at the bottom there was a bus stop. And every day these 3 girls, sisters, used to wait at the bus stop to go to school and back. Yeah. And we became friends, just chatty. And then moved up to Brisbane. I didn't know I ran into them. One of them was she was a model, and she ended up with her own modelling agency.
Oh, right, okay.
Anyway, I ran into them. They said, look, we're having a party tonight, Saturday night. Do you want to come? Give me the address. I said, fine. So I made my way to this party. And it happened that there was a couple of British Navy ships in port. Right. And the girls had obviously met these Navy guys, and they'd invited them to this party. And about 3 of them played guitar and sang. You know, all of the stuff from that era, like Leaving on a Jet Plane and all those songs, you know, really good. And I was just watching them, and they said to me, look, is there anywhere we can play tomorrow night? And I said, do you know, I think there is. There was a place called the Folk Centre, that it was open Friday and Saturday and Sunday nights. And I knew where it was, but I'd never been. Yeah. And I said, look, I'll tell you what, it's ever so difficult to explain how to get there, because it was down all these alleyways. So I'll tell you what, 7 o'clock, let's meet at this pub nearby. We'll have a beer, and then I'll take you to this place. Yeah. So that was my first ever entrance into this folk club. And these guys got on stage and did their thing, and everything was really good. And then a guy got on stage, and he started to play flamenco guitar. Yeah. And I got to tell you, it absolutely blew my head away. I've never been so influenced by something in my whole life, and I suddenly had to do that. I couldn't even hold the guitar, and that's the most complicated guitar playing there is. I had to do it, and it became a compulsion. So I went to this guy's name is Peter Williamson. So I went to Peter and I said, look, will you give me lessons? Okay, so I started having lessons with him. And talk about obsessed. I can tell you that on the 5 days a week when I worked, I was practicing 12 hours a day. Right. On the 2 days when I didn't work, I was practicing 16 hours a day. I was obsessed with it, which you had to do because technically it's incredibly difficult technique. All the coordination and hand control and all that. Plus the rhythms, all the rhythms are they're not like normal rhythms. they don't have 4/4, 6/4 timing.
No.
It's all accents and for a particular reason. Anyway, kind of very long story short, Peter got a job playing in a restaurant 3 nights a week, and I used to go and sit with him, and I'd play second guitar.
Yeah.
You know, not very well, but it was good practice for me, and it made the music sound good. And anyway, Peter was he was a bit of a drama queen. He was a bit of he did what he wanted. He used to arrive at the restaurant whatever time he liked.
Right.
He'd sit down and play whenever he felt like it. He'd stop when he felt like it. He'd go home when he felt like it.
Okay.
And in the end, the people who owned the restaurant, they got fed up with it. So Roger, who owned it, he came up to me one day and he said, David, he said, if this gig became available, would you take it? I said, what are you talking about? You know, I'd only been playing 14 months from start. And I said, no, this is Peter's gig. He said, you're not listening to me. If this job became available, would you take it? So in the end, I had no option, so I said, yes, I might as well. But they gave me the job 7 nights a week. It's a full-time job for me.
They must have heard something really good.
Yeah, well, the thing is that I used to sit down at the table with people that came in and say, would you like me to play something for you? Would you like something romantic? Or do you want something a bit more rhythm? Or, you know, and just interact, because people are my thing.
Yeah.
I love people.
Yeah.
And it's pretty obvious, you know. Anyway, Peter got really annoyed with that. And it wasn't long after that he actually left Brisbane. He got a job with a theatre company moving with La Mancha, Man of La Mancha. But anyway, just before that, I'd had a lesson with Peter. I used to have a lesson on a Saturday about 11, 12 o'clock. And I'd had a lesson with him. And Peter and his wife Robin, who was a dancer, they were getting ready to go out. So I'm just sat down, I'm just strumming away at something. And Peter comes around and he said, where did you learn that?
Yeah.
And it was a rhythm that he hadn't taught me.
Oh, right.
And I said, oh, it's just like watching you. He said, well, you're not doing it right. And then he showed me, it was a tiny little thing. And then I started to play it. And he came out and he said, right, David, he said, have you got a white shirt and black trousers? I said, I think so, yeah. He said, go home and get changed and meet us here. You can have your first gig today. You're going to be accompanying. My first gig, believe it or not, was live television. I had no idea that, and what it was that Peter used to work with his wife, was the dancer, Robin, and another guy called, the Dutch guy called Jan Zwan. Now Jan played second guitar, or he sang. He couldn't do both, which is understandable because you're playing rhythms which are not the same as the vocals, right? But so anyway, they said to me, if you come and play second guitar, he can sing with a more complete sound. So my first ever live performance was on television.
Wow,
right?
that's good.
But what it was New Faces. It was a talent competition, and we won it. It was incredible. So what happened was, like 3 or 4 weeks later, we were being flown down to Sydney at their expense, met with a limo, taken to a 5-star hotel. And I thought I could get used to this, you know, and it really cemented my wanting to become a musician. Anyway, later on, I did New Faces as a soloist, and I went to Melbourne. I won the Brisbane one, then I won the Melbourne one, but then I was leaving 3 or 4 days later to come back to the UK on my way to study in Spain. And so I did a lot of television in Australia, a lot.
Right.
Yeah, because the thing is this, is that when any kind of a variety show, whether it's on television or a cabaret, you've usually got the main performer is either a comedian or a singer.
Yeah.
And to get an accompanying act that didn't conflict with them is quite difficult, but with the flamenco group, you're not competing with them, you're just something really different. So we got lots of work, right?
Okay.
And I can remember, for example, going to Bernard Manning's club. Bernard Manning, the comedian, who's been dead for a while now. But he was, I don't know if anybody knows this, but he was renowned for the first half an hour of his act. He would pick on people in the audience and have a go at them, right? And he was very good at it, right? And people used to love it as long as it wasn't them, you know. For example, on I've only been to his place once. On the first time I was watching him, and he's talking about it, he says, look at the nose on that woman over there. My God, what a conk. And everybody's looking at this woman. And he said, and him over the back, he's just as bad. He said, if you two stand back to back, you make a bloody good pickaxe. And then he said, oh, look at the ears on him. He said, you know, from here, you look like the FA Cup. You know? And then there was a woman he was swearing a lot, and the woman getting very upset, and she was a very well-to-do dressed woman. She's getting really, really upset. And he walked over to her and he said, excuse me, love. He said, you know, if anything I'm saying to you is upsetting you, I'm really, really sorry. Look, you know, please to show you're not too worried. Please give us Uncle Bernard a smile. And then she did. She couldn't do anything else. 1,000 people looked at her. And then he said something funny, and she sort of chuckled. And then he said something funnier, and she laughed. Because, you know, absolutely amazing, really.
Yeah.
There was another guy. His club used to have a long stage with 3 steps down, and then was tables and chairs. And one of the tables and chairs, the guy was sitting, and he had his foot rested on the bottom step of this, just innocently. And Manning goes over to him and says, excuse me, Susan, are you an entertainer? I said, no. He says, well, get your bloody foot off the stage. He said, I don't walk to your ass while you're performing. Anyway, what I'm leading up to say is that he introduced me, because the way that we used to do it, I used to go on stage and play a couple of solos, and then bring the dancers and the singers on, you know, to make it more. Anyway, he introduced me, I'll never forget this. He said, I'm now going to introduce to you a young man who reckons he can play the guitar. If this guy can play the guitar, I will show my ass to the Vatican. Imagine going on stage after that, you know. Luckily, I could play and I got away with it. But that's something that I'll never forget that in my whole life, you know. Because how could you imagine somebody introduce you like that? Anyway, cut a long story short, I came back from Australia, having been away about 5 years. And in the meantime, my parents had moved from Great Yarmouth to Shrewsbury. My father had bought a shop called Teleelectrics. And because he was an electronics engineer, he used to do TV repairs and all that kind of thing, plus sell and hire TVs and all that kind of thing, you know. And I used to help him because when I was about 3 years of age, he was on the back of a friend's motorbike and they got sideswiped by a car and his knee was smashed. And in those days, they didn't have artificial kneecaps. So he was crippled forever from this smash. So I used to go into the shop and help him. A couple of days a week, because he'd go out to somebody's house to try and fix their colour TV, which are monstrous things, do you remember? Terrible things. Massive. And if he had to bring it back to the workshop to fix it, I used to help him carry out all of that. In the meantime, I've got a job. I was teaching at Shrewsbury School. Right. Teaching guitar. It was one of the top schools in the country. And I mean, that for me was an anchor. It was really, really good. I had about 30 private students. Right. Used to come to me for lessons. I was playing in a restaurant in Shrewsbury 2 nights a week. Plus, every now and again, I would have cabaret with the dancers and everything. I mean, I did a show with Clifford Hocking, who used to be a famous balladeer in the day, and people like that. And then every few weeks, I'd got to London for a day, and I'd study. I studied with Paco Penny for a while, and so my life was bliss. Anyway, I planned to not stop in England, just to stop long enough to touch base with my family, and then I was going to move on to Spain. Anyway, I met who became my first wife. I met Sheila, and everything changed with that. And actually, we did go to Spain, but it was a bit of a disaster. I mean, she hated it. It was very early. This was in the very early 70s, and Spain wasn't then what it is now. Right. And of course, we went to Cordoba, which is was very basic. In fact, I was ill there. I brushed my teeth with the water. Oh, right. Okay. And I was ill for 3 days. I could not leave the place. Right. Anyway, cut a long story short, we didn't stay there very long, which was disappointing for me. I did buy a new guitar while I was there, so that was okay. But anyway, one day, Sheila said to me, I want you to get a real job. Right. And I should have said, F you, know, I'm not, because I wasn't making much money, but I wasn't in debt or anything, you know. But I loved what I did. But, anyway, I thought to myself, David, what can you do? You know, you've got no skills apart from playing guitar. Well, you know, I wasn't trained to do anything.
So I hope you enjoyed this part 1 of David Pleasance's story, and I hope you'll join me for part 2, part 3 and more. It's a very, very interesting and diverse story, and I hope you'll agree it's one that I think a lot of people would want to find out what happens next in the life and times of David Pleasance. So thank you for watching. Please subscribe, and I hope to see you again soon.